I think you're just excited to show off your brand new workspace. I think that's why
It's
you're so
so
ready.
it's so nice. Hey mom, if you're watching, I finally have things on the walls.
Did she talk to you about that? Because I
Oh, the
thought the
very
same thing.
the very first podcast that I did, she was like, "You need stuff on your walls." And I'm like, "I'm working on it. It's where I'm able to do it right now." And it only took a whole football season, but here we finally are.
And it looks great. It looks grand. It looks super. I love it. Oh man, I'm excited for this episode too. We got the waiver wires to trash, and you have some of your favorites that I guess this week, right? A little bit easier for you, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. There were a lot that I was just like, "Nope, not that person, not that person, not definitely not that person." So I
You're
think I
avoiding
got
a
a
whole
little
lot of them.
I think I got a little aggressive on the show sheet in a couple of them. I'm like, "Why?" So it'll be fun to talk it out loud.
I saw that. I saw you added in a couple explanation points. I'm excited for that. I'm ready for it. All right, you ready to kick the show off?
Let's do it.
All right, where's that button at? I know I put it around here somewhere. Here it is.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into another episode of Fantasy Intervention. Of course, it is Tuesday, so I, of course, had to bring in Britt Flynn to join me for the Waiver Wire Show. What's going on, Britt? How you doing tonight?
I'm so good. So
So
good.
good, so good, so good. Of course, you get to show off your brand new layout, which we were just talking about prior to the show starting, so I know you're very, very excited for that. But yeah, we got an epic show coming to you all tonight. If you guys want to go check out some of our content, see what's going on, you guys got to go check us out over there on Twitter. You guys can find Britt over there at Britt_Flynn on Twitter, and you can find me at FF_intervention. So we will have questions lined up throughout the chat. We will get some answers out to you. We actually had some people reach out on Twitter today as well. Oh, big shout out to you guys, of course. So we have some questions coming in from Twitter. If you guys are on Twitter and y'all want to join us, ask some questions yourselves, bring them on into the chat, but you're going to have to go to youtube.com/fantasy intervention. Those joining us from fantasy football discussion, y'all are safe. Y'all are safe. We see your questions. Unfortunately, Twitter and StreamYard don't work well together. So if you're on Twitter, go over there to youtube.com/fantasy intervention. But let's kick this show off, Brits. Let's do it. Let's kick this show off. And let's start out with our first segment where we're going to run through a few people. We don't want to dive too much into it. They're obvious pickups, which you guys have seen everywhere. You know, like we want to make sure that y'all know that you're safe to pick up these players. So Britt, go ahead and start us out with your first no shit. You got to pick up of the week.
Well, so I know we talked about this last week, but I still stand Taysom Hill. Like, yeah, he threw 4 interceptions, but he ran for so many yards. Like, it was the perfect storm of terrible in real life and great at fantasy football. Like, it was just so perfect. And this week they're playing the Jets. I mean, this matchup's crazy good. I don't think there's any way he throws 4 interceptions again. And he has a favorable matchup pretty much down the line. They're at the Jets this week, at Tampa, and then versus Miami. So the finger concerns me a little bit, but at this point, if you need a quarterback, he's got the most upside of anybody out there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, I believe it was a similar injury, if not the same one, to Russell Wilson. Luckily, we don't have to worry about Taysom Hill throwing because he's going to throw interceptions regardless. We just want that rushing upside. Now, I will say something makes me a little bit nervous, which keeps him from like a no shit pickup like lock, somebody that I want to make sure is on every single one of my waivers. And that's just Alvin Kamara possibly coming back. We could see a few more dump offs, which still brings stats, by the way, to Taysom Hill, but he might not be asked to run as often with the increased efficiency in the running back position with Alvin Kamara returning. So as for that, yep, we'll go ahead and throw him in there. I know I said he's not a lock, but I at least want to play him. I actually did pick him up in one of my leagues that I'm making a playoff push for over there. So I did put in a waiver claim for him. I can't tell you which league because I don't want everybody knowing. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to your next position that you have.
Yeah, so it's the running back position. It's Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, we saw Damian Harris kind of pull up on that hamstring right before the half. Then we saw him try to give another go at it, and then he pulled off and went off the field again. I mean, obviously, the Patriots have a bye this week, so he's not going to help you if you need a cover for, God forbid, like a Miles Sanders or a Jonathan Taylor type person. But if you're looking for a potential league winner down the road for your championship game, I would look at scooping him up now. They play Indy in week 15 versus Buffalo, who's just crumbled against the run. Like, again, we saw it last night. I think weather obviously had a factor, but they got destroyed by JT too. But in week 17, they get the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's your fantasy football championships. Like, if Damian Harris is still out with a hamstring, and hamstrings do tend to linger, I mean, Stevenson is a lock.
I agree with you as him being a lock for the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? I'm a little bit nervous. I'll say this. I'm a little bit nervous, picking him up now. However, I will say that the Colts, DeForest Buckner, if he's not in the game, this whole entire defense shifts as to what its identity is and what their strengths are. They are forced to bring more blitzers to be able to stop them, or they end up getting beat, or when they do that, they end up getting beat in the secondary. So they can choose to either get beat in the passing game or choose to get beat in the running game. I think that with Ramondre Stevenson, he showed, this past week up against the Bills that he can handle the pressure up front. He can fight through tackles, not just this past week, but, multiple weeks throughout the season. And so even if Mac Jones is at a position where, poor weather, whatever the case is, Ramondre Stevenson is still going to be a viable option, even if they stack the box. So I do like Ramondre Stevenson. Depending on who's on your flex positions, I would think about playing him up against the Colts. I don't know if I would play him up against the Bills, although he did well this past week. I still might be a little bit hesitant, but then you cannot deny his upside up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, like in week 17. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's lovely. I love that take. All right. As for the wide receiver position, I see that you have KJ Osborne written here, which is my number one waiver wire pickup of the week with Adam Thielen it being out. So what are you thinking over there with Ramondre? I'm with KJ Osborne, excuse me.
I mean, he showed it. As soon as Thielen went out in the first offensive series, Osborne played 92% of the snaps. He caught a touchdown. He ran all the routes. In the upcoming schedules, really, really favorable to them. They play Pittsburgh. They're at Chicago. They're versus the Rams, and then at Green Bay, who, if you look at season-long stats, they're 13th against the wide receiver, but in the past couple weeks, they're 29th. So whatever's going on in that secondary really has me questioning their efficiency. And I think Osborne has the speed and playmaking ability opposite Justin Jefferson to do something. And we know Thielen's going to be out. I mean, it's a high ankle sprain. They're being pretty wishy-washy on how long he's going to be out, but it's a high ankle. It's going to be a few weeks at least.
Yeah. So with the running back position, it obviously hinders a running back a little bit more because they're plants and they're going down. I'm not saying that the wide receivers don't do that same thing, because they do from time to time. However, when it comes to pushing piles, when it comes to making jump cuts and whatnot, something that running backs tend to do a little bit more often, they're not as hindered or they're not as reliant on their ankle. The running back position is. So with that being said, I think that he could still come back, but where's his relevance? Like, what is he going to do when he does come back? Is he just going to be a decoy who's running out routes or running, straight line, seam routes, trying to get in the slot and trying to take some of the middle defenders off? Meanwhile, KJ Osborne actually sees those targets on the outside, sees the crossing routes, see the routes that Adam Thielen was running. And then the biggest thing is the goal line. like I said, I don't think that the wide receivers are hindered as much by high ankle sprains. However, Adam Thielen's custom route is that in and out route that he runs at the goal line where they have 2 yards to go and he shakes the defender and gets wide open. Now that might go to Justin Jefferson, but Justin Jefferson could see an increase in coverage, see more double coverages. That would leave KJ Osborne as the potential red zone target moving forward, outside of Tyler Conklin, of course. So I actually really like KJ Osborne. I think he's somebody that you got to pick up. I'm not saying you have to play him this week. I would play him. If I needed to, if I need somebody in the back in my flex options, I would play him. But you don't have to. You can sit and wait and see what he does because, like you brought up, the secondary for the Minnesota Vikings has been decimated. They've been dealing with injuries all across it. And now you have KJ Osborne, being able to be that guy that Kirk Cousins targets in games where they're losing. I mean, this team has completely fallen apart. And although they've been in a lot of close games, they've been in close games because their offense has been able to score. So look for KJ Osborne to be that guy. As for Van Jefferson, I feel like Van Jefferson, we're giving a lot of love to, and he's seeing a lot of love every single week. So what are your thoughts on Van Jefferson?
Yeah, he's still rostered in far too few leagues. I mean, he's wide receiver 34 on the season. Wide receiver 34. Like, that's crazy to me that he's still available in 40% of leagues. He played 78% of wide receiver snaps in week 13, and then he has an upcoming schedule against Arizona, who outside of Budda Baker really doesn't have a big playmaker in the secondary. Then they play Seattle, Minnesota, who we just talked about, their secondary is garbage, and then at Baltimore. So
Baltimore's lost their top 2 cornerbacks for the year. I mean,
yep.
Yeah, give me Baltimore all day.
Yeah. So I don't care. Obviously, it's Cooper Kupp, and then it's a toss-up between Odell Beckham and Van Jefferson, but it seems like Van Jefferson is the one who gets those long targets, runs those deep ball routes, and finds the end zone. So I really, really like Van Jefferson going forward for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't doubt that whatsoever. It's something where we've been hitting Van Jefferson for the past few weeks, and I was somebody that was not a big fan of Van Jefferson when he first came in the NFL. I wasn't big on Van Jefferson. I mean, he had subpar speed outside of, he was the fastest player, who reached a top speed at the pro days, whatever that excuse was. I was not on Van Jefferson, and I'm kind of coming to Jesus on this one. I'm coming to Van Jefferson on this one, and I'm really been buying into him, and I have been for the past 4 or 5 weeks now. So I might been a little bit late to the party, but at least I'm not missing it completely. So Van Jefferson is definitely on my must pick up radar. As for Julio Jones is back, baby, right?
He's back. I'm a little hesitant about him, but when you think about just how bad Tennessee needs receivers, that's why he's a lock for me. Tennessee is just in such dire need. And I mean, their upcoming schedule's pretty great too. I think they're going to have some bad games. The only thing that I will say about Julio is that it seems like his hamstring is constantly injured, and I'm a little bit worried about him re-aggravating it and going out again. But aside from that happening, his volume is just going to be crazy good, and I hope that he pays off for me because I drafted him in far too many leagues.
Hey, it's a playoff push. If you got Julio Jones, you're in your best ball leagues or anything like that, you're taking to the championships. Let's go. All right, so we have one position left, but I do want to let, who is this? Colby know in the chat that we will end up bringing in his question for, who is that? Ricky Seals Jones. He's actually going to be in our next segment, so stay tuned for that. And then David Goodman, we have your question lined up as well after this next player. So who do you have for the tight end position? Hit us with it.
So I've got Austin Hooper. And if you've watched the show the entirety of the season, you know that I'm usually very, very skeptical about Cleveland's passing game. I've talked shit on it all year long. But today, Njoku got placed on the COVID list. Odell Beckham Jr.'s gone. Hooper is literally the only tight end in Cleveland right now. The only one. Harrison Bryant's doubtful. And then even their fourth string, like Stephen Colbert, I think, he's out. So Cleveland loves to play or scheme pass plays specifically for their tight ends. I think Hooper's going to go off this week.
Yeah, I trashed Hooper back like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's because it was inconsistent with the targets. I didn't understand why they're sitting there trying to attack Hooper, and he had a horrible game. But this week, I mean, like you brought up, he's the only weapon, people. He is the only weapon. And when people are sitting there rolling out, like Cole Kmet and stuff, and rolling out some of these other tight ends who actually have target competition in their own offense, right? Austin Hooper doesn't have that. Austin Hooper has nobody. Donovan Peoples-Jones, hopefully, will be healthy. We'll talk about him here in a little bit. Jarvis Landry has been wildly inefficient. I mean, they don't have anybody else in the passing game. And the Ravens, like we just brought up, have lost their secondary. They lost their top 2 corners. So they're going to have to use their safeties to help with double coverages on the outsides, which means that Hooper's going to see one-on-one coverage from the linebackers. We could see an absolute explosion from Austin Hooper, 2-touchdown game if the Browns are able to move the ball. Hopefully they're going to run it more than like 10 times or whatever they did. I have no idea what happened last week they faced Baltimore. But coming off a bye week, I think that we could see a very high-level production for Hooper when you have 2 weeks to actually scheme for him to get open. I love that take. So let's go ahead and let's bring in David Goodman into this chat. And he's asking, what's a good streaming defense for this week? Now, David, I'm going to give you a heads up, okay? I don't really start outside of like waiver wire pickups. I don't start studying my starter sit questions until tomorrow when I start to put together my DFS, start to put together my Wednesday show. So if you actually want to bring this question into Wednesday, I can kind of reevaluate this. However, on the fly, a defense that might be available for you. We could talk about the Bengals defense possibly, but they're most likely rostered. Green Bay's defense is actually a great flyer up against the Bears, regardless of who plays quarterback. So I would hop on to Green Bay if they're available. We could see, I don't know, help me out here, Britt, if you see one that you really like.
I feel like the Chargers against the Giants and Jake Fromm is going to be a lock. Like Joey Bosa's back. I think they're going to have a ton of sacks. The only thing that I'm concerned about that being a trap is they're terrible against the run, and I don't know how much they're going to get Saquon involved on the Giants' end.
I don't know if the Chargers would be actually on waivers if they're streaming. Right, the Chargers are one of the top-ranked defenses in the NFL up against the pass. Sure, they don't create a ton of turnovers, but if they are on your waiver wires, that's my number 1 pickup of the week. Yeah, that is my top pickup.
They are available in this league. It says that they are only 7.3% rostered in ESPN leagues.
Give me the damn Chargers. Great call by Britt. Give me the damn Chargers. Bring it. All right, we have Colby Colston. Oh, I told you. So I'll answer the second part of this question. But as for the first part, we had your Ricky Seals-Jones segment coming up in this piece that we're about to start with. But as for J-Rob has the Titans, and the Titans have been, kind of like hit or miss up against the running back position. He's dealing with an injury to his foot. People are telling you to go pick up Carlos Hyde, which we'll talk about here in a second. That makes no sense. J-Rob, yeah, I mean, so Adam Hutchinson, which is, our resident doctor for fantasy intervention or trainer, or whatever the hell he is. He's actually great with the insights as to whether you want to play some of these running backs. And he said that J-Rob tremendously concerned with this past week. And, he wasn't that far off. But is he a must start? No. But you would have to have a very, very good secondary or tertiary option, in order to go with to move J-Rob off it for me up against the Tennessee Titans. All right. So let's go ahead and hop into this next Oh, wait, I do. Giovanni, you got to help me out with the pronunciation of your name, because I don't want to say Giovanni, and I also don't want to say Giovanni if it is Giovanni. So help me out. Is the J silent or no? But anyways, we'll get to your question. However, we do have to answer a question from Twitter, which was brought to our attention earlier today from Ryan. So Ryan's sitting there. He's dealing with some issues over there in the flex spots. He is in trouble because Keenan Allen is COVID. He has Pittman on a bye, and the wide receivers on his bench are MVS and Bateman. The waiver wire options are slim. He's got Reynolds, he's got St. Brown, he's got Rondale Moore, he's got Watkins, he's got Osborne, and he's got Westbrook Ikene. So Osborne is obviously like the only pickup that we mentioned in this entire thing, and St. Brown is going to be our next segment. However, if it comes to starting a player, MVS is probably my go-to here because we have Randall Cobb hurt. We have Tanyan out. They probably will be a little bit run heavy in this game. However, I think that MVS is probably going to be the start, but I think that you have to pick up KJ Osborne just in case things don't start to shake out. The Bears have been, terrible as of late. So if Green Bay goes up right by 2 or 3 touchdowns at some point in this game, they won't have to take deep shots. And it's just going to be Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon running the ball constantly. So there are some cases as to where I don't want to play MVS because the relevance might not be there just because of the matchup. However, KJ Osborne, depending on how you're looking, will make you feel safe. Are you in agreement there, or do you think there was a better option to go with between Reynolds, St. Brown, Rondell Moore, Watkins, or Westbrook-Ikene?
I think you have to pick up Osborne just because of the volume that we talked about. But MVS is really intriguing to me. And I know that we trashed him a couple weeks ago just because of his inconsistency and things like that. But in week 11, he had 10 targets. And in week 12, he had 9. And several of those have been pretty deep targets. So I don't know. I'm a little intrigued on seeing, is he going to go off? I don't know. Is it one flex spot that he's just trying to decide between MVS and Osborne?
It's possible. It's possible.
Oof.
Might be 2.
Yeah.
Might be 2. So you might have to roll out both.
So if it's 2, I would definitely roll out those 2. But pick up Osborne regardless, just because of the upcoming matchups and the mix and match options that you have going forward.
And now he wants to know between JaMychal Hasty, or would you roll the dice on Foreman or Hilliard? So he has Elijah Mitchell, right? So he's wondering if he should pick up Hasty just in case Elijah Mitchell doesn't play, which makes a lot of sense. But then he also has Foreman and Hilliard available. And, we just talked about Jacksonville up against Tennessee this week. I mean, that's a smash play. And for me, I'm going with Deonta Foreman over top of the other 2. I really, really like Hasty. I really like Hasty this week. But Deonta Foreman has an opportunity to seize the workload. Meanwhile, Jerry McNichols could come back and take the workload away from Hilliard, possibly. Not a guarantee, but possibly. So I'm going to go with Deonta Foreman to think that they're going to run, and they're going to run a ton this week, and they're going to get some breakaway runs from Deonta Foreman. And I know I should be saying Hilliard, but I'm not. I don't like Hilliard as a player.
No, Hilliard is still, I think, the back-to-back 19-point fantasy games or whatever. It's just he's going to put up 2 for you pretty soon. But I kind of like Hasty, honestly, this week. I don't, so the reason that I'm leaning Hasty is that he already has Mitchell, and Mitchell has dealt with his series of injuries this season, right? He was out for the first couple, early part of the season, then he had that broken finger, and then he wakes up Monday with a concussion. I'm not sure how durable he's going to be going forward. And I mean, we're in crunch time. So if something bad does happen to him, I would really like to have Hasty and not give him up to another team in the playoffs.
All right, so let's go ahead and hop onto this next segment real quick. And this is the players you're trashing, the ones you want to avoid. And if you guys go to trophysmack.com, you guys can actually find my pieces that I write, which actually have 4 players in which I do not want to pick up on the waivers that everybody else is telling you to pick up. I think it's absolute suicide for your rosters. I think that you're looking at a position where your rosters will implode. So, if you want to go check it out, trophysmack.com and go to the Smack Zone. And you can also go find some badass trophies over there and title belts. I mean, this thing is absolutely legit. You can see it. It's heavy. Oh, it's upside. I always do it upside down. It's heavy as shit. You can actually get nameplates to engrave and get it put in right here and installed. So each winner every year actually gets one of these. So if you go to trophysmack.com, use promo code CIRCLE, you'll actually get a free championship ring valued at $60 with the purchase of a trophy or a title belt. Now you have to have the ring in there with the title belt or with the trophy. But when you go to checkout, use promo code CIRCLE. And you'll actually get a free ring with either a purchase of a belt or a trophy. So go check it out over there, trophysmack.com. All right, so let's hop on to this next segment. And Colby, I am typing out your answers so that we don't have to go through it again. But let's go ahead and go to the first quarterback you're avoiding. Britt, start us out.
Yeah, I had to do a double take when I read this. Like, how are people advocating that you pick up Trevor Lawrence? Like, how? Well, but the matchup's good. With someone like Lawrence, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's in a bad offense. He has no weapons. His coaching stinks, which you're typing up a J-Rob thing. It came out today that he actually did bench J-Rob and he refused to give the press an answer. He goes, go talk to the position coach. Like, why would you do that? It's a total disaster down there. But if you want actual stats, Lawrence has only averaged 5 yards per attempt and only 2 touchdowns since their bye in week 7. That's half of this season ago. Like, it's literally the worst. I can't believe anybody's actually recommending that you pick him up. I would have Jake freaking Fromm as my quarterback over Trevor Lawrence. Honestly, it's terrible.
It's a nightmare over there. And like you said, regardless of the matchups, like who is he going to throw his touchdowns to? I mean, obviously they hate Laviska Shenault. They just hate him. What, 3 receptions? Are you kidding me? This was the one chance that you had to go out there and attack a team who plays off coverage against underneath route runners, right? Like no other team in the NFL does this. Maybe the Bears from time to time do it, but nobody really does this. I mean, we're talking about Laviska Shenault, who should have had a hammer of a game. We are now seeing the same amount of targets that he's seen since DJ Chark got injured, since what's his name got injured, that's been playing Agnew that got injured, since Dan Arnold got in. I mean, what is happening? Like, it makes absolutely no sense to me. And it's got to be infuriating to be a Jacksonville Jaguars fan at this point. Like, how are you not already calling for Urban Meyer's head on a platter at this point? It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's freaking embarrassing, Britt. It's embarrassing.
It's terrible. It's awful. This entire season has just been chaos. And it's so bad that people are actually kind of lobbying him to go take these open college head coaching vacancies because they want him out of the NFL so bad.
And you are welcome, sir. Speaking to Colby. All right, so we have the running back position. And I'm fully locked and loaded on running backs this week. I am fully locked and loaded on running backs that I don't want anywhere close to my rosters. Let's go ahead and start out with this first one with Adrian Peterson. I'll let you take the reins on this because we pretty much almost said the exact same thing without even knowing it. We just had that connection.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, it actually was pretty funny. So go ahead and tell us your first running back.
So it's Adrian Peterson. Like, what? I don't know why the NFL can't quit Adrian Peterson. Like, he's a drug to all these teams. That's the only thing that I can think about. I mean, Seattle said that they went out and got him because they're all in. Like, they pulled a whole Rams deal. Like, just crazy. But last week, he only played 26% of the snaps, and that was with Alex Collins out. The snap count's one thing on its own. But then you look at his yards per carry average. It's wild. It's so wild. He carried the ball 11 times for 16 freaking yards. That
makes no sense.
1.5 yards per carry. Like, what are you doing if you're going after Adrian Peterson? Oh, but he's going to get that goal line carry. No, if you're pinning your hopes on goal line carries, like, you've already lost. Like, don't do it.
He had wait. You know, he got a touchdown, right, on a carry from the goal line. So I went in just to check it out. He had 3 carries at the 1 yard line and got one of them in. I think he had another carry at like the 5 and then another carry at the 9 and didn't do anything with either one of those either. So he had like 5 carries inside the 10-yard line and got 1 touchdown out of it. Like, what makes people think that he's going to be the goal line back and that the goal line back is actually going to score in this offense? Like, he's not Marshawn Lynch. Like, he's not the old Adrian Peterson. It blows my mind. And it's absolutely ridiculous that people would bring up Adrian Peterson. Adrian freaking Peterson.
And Collins was questionable. I mean, he practiced, I think, in a limited fashion today. So, you know, if Peterson only played 26% of the snaps with Collins out, like, what's he going to do when Collins is in there? Like,
nothing.
No sense.
No sense at all. No sense. God, these people are ridiculous. All right, let's hop on to another running back. And I'll take a swipe real quick of mine because you got a couple more. I got a couple more. Let's go ahead and let's go with Tevin Coleman for me. Like, Tevin Coleman had an all right week up against susceptible defensive line when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're not terrible, but they're not great. He had an okay week. It wasn't great. But the schedule upcoming is brutal. Like the Jets have the Saints this week, which are nuts. They've allowed a single 100-yard rusher on the season. And then, people are sitting there saying, oh, well, he caught some passes this past week. Well, guess what? The Saints allow a 4.19 dose score. That's dump off containment efficiency score. That's number 7th overall ranked in the league. If you want to check it out, you can go check it out at fantasyintervention.com/DOCE, where it actually tells you when you can play pass catching running backs. After that, in week 15, Coleman then faces the Dolphins, who became the first team since 1994 to win 5 straight after losing 7 in a row, but they've done it all with their defense. They haven't allowed a single back to get over 75 yards rushing since week 4, haven't allowed a rushing touchdown in the past 6 matchups, and they're giving up a even smaller dose score at, well, that's not right. I think it's 3.79 possibly. Either way. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They're only giving up 6.79 yards per reception to the running back, which is number 6 overall in the NFL. So Tevin Coleman, he's not going to see the efficiency there in the passing game. He's not going to see a ton of targets in the passing game. He's definitely not going to see any run over the next 2 weeks. And then we sit there and people are like, well, look at the final 2 matchups. Those are sexy. Like, those are some great. He has Michael Carter coming back, the RB1. Ty Johnson's still taking work over there. Why people want to rep Tevin Coleman is like, it's the same people who've been talking about Tevin Coleman now for 5 or 6 years, so that he's going to break out. It's like, it's not going to happen. I hopped on the Tevin Coleman train for like maybe a month in the offseason this year for the first time ever. I hopped on and it was like the worst mistake I ever made. It was so stupid. Do not hop on with Tevin Coleman. Don't waste your roster space. They are so precious at this point in the season where you can grab your handcuffs. You can grab the guys that you need to make this playoff run. And if you end up wasting that roster space, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, there's no reason to grab Coleman. It's honestly that entire offense outside of Elijah Moore, I want nothing to do with.
Nothing. Yeah, I don't blame you. It's ridiculous. All right, who you got next?
I've got Kenneth Gainwell. And this hurts me to say because you and I both really, really love Gainwell as an athlete. But the offense that he's working in with Nick Sirianni, we never know what kind of usage he's going to get, what kind of role he's going to have, whether he's going to be a goal line back, whether he's going to be a pass catching back. I mean, it's sad, but we can't cry over spilled milk, right? The facts just say, like, don't play him. So the Eagles are on a bye this week. So just like Stevenson, like that doesn't really help you. But if you're looking for a stash going forward, they face the Washington football team, who are actually 13th against the run over the past 4 weeks, which is crazy to me because they have Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I mean, has Sweat come back?
No.
Oh, yeah, he's out.
They've just been playing like a team lately. Like the defensive coordinator switched things up after the bye. And so this whole team has been playing like one cohesive unit ever since they end up allowing a little bit more press coverage. They're not relying so on the pass rush because they don't have as good of a pass rush. So the defense is playing up more and they're not allowing us any more underneath dump offs or anything that we saw at the beginning of the season. It's absolutely insane what happens when you actually play the defense correctly. But yeah.
Yeah, they've shocked me. And as a Cowboys fan, this game on Sunday is going to be fun. But anyway, even in primo matchups this season, whereas Washington isn't, Gainwell has been so inconsistent in yardage and usage. In week 8 against Detroit, he averaged 2.1 yards per carry on 13 attempts. Like, that's terrible. Terrible. And so, that's my best Charles Barkley impression. But with Jordan Howard and Boston Scott most likely coming back into the mix, like, you absolutely can't trust him. And especially, we're going to hammer on it again, not at this point in the season. It's the playoffs, people. Come on.
You need that upside in the playoffs. And that, like, he's not one of those guys that can offer it to an extent. But I do like Kenny Gainwell so much. This hurts.
It does hurt. But he's just not getting used right in Sirianni's offense.
All right, I don't even want to take over after that. Like, you can go ahead and play your next guy because I'm kind of depressed now.
So the next person is Carlos Hyde. Why anybody would want a piece of this backfield, I have no idea. We kind of touched on it with Trevor Lawrence, but the coaching in Jacksonville is just poopy caca. Like, no, Urban Meyer has no idea what he's doing. He admitted that he benched James Robinson after one fumble and then let this 31-year-old running back with a 2.46 yards per carry average to come in and run against the Rams. Like, against a team where you should have had a good offensive game plan. Nope, let's put Carlos Hyde in. Like, just don't do it. Next
They're
week,
creating a culture. They're creating a culture. Go talk to the offensive coordinator about it.
Oof. But yeah, the Jags are facing the Titans. The Titans are 10th against the run over the past 4 weeks. Like, just don't think about Carlos Hyde. Like, that's full on desperation mode. That's just admitting defeat before the first game even starts.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. All right. Let's go on to this next player. And, if you're watching, right, and you actually do shows, and you like Ronald Jones, I want you to come out not because, we need to have an argument or anything like that. I'm actually playing with something from Trophy Smack right now where we could be doing some shows for Trophy Smack, short little clips. And if you like Ronald Jones, I'd love to discuss this with you. However, we have Ronald Jones coming in and people are like, get your handcuffs. Like, this is the time. Ronald Jones is not the freaking handcuff for Leonard Fournette. Like, it's absolutely unreal. He's not a stud player. And even if he was, like, there's still certain times where you have to question playing stud players. Now, we have the Bills, we have the Saints, and we have the Panthers over the next 3 games for Leonard Fournette. Even if the Bills were poor, so you still have them up first, right? So if Leonard Fournette gets hurt, you're not rolling out Ronald Jones this week up against the Bills because you don't know that Leonard Fournette's going to get hurt. So maybe he gets hurt up against the Bills and you get to run out Ronald Jones versus the Saints and up against the Panthers. I still don't want that. First off, the Saints and Panthers are 2 of the best teams, up against the dump-off containment efficiency score, which would allow him to get points in the receiving game. But Ronald Jones does not catch passes. We have Ronald Jones, let's see, he had what? Yeah, he was 5th in drops and 2nd in drop rate for backs with 40 or more targets. That's absolutely insane. Right? Like, that is an insane amount of drops. Leonard
Not to mention his fumbles.
Yeah, and his fumbles. And also, he only caught 60.5% of his passes that were given to him beyond the line of scrimmage in 2020. So, like, he's not catching anything over there. 50.6% of Leonard Fournette's fantasy production has come in the receiving game in 2021. So you're telling me that a pass catching or a running back that is not a pass catching back is going to be the handcuff for a guy who's getting more production from his receiving game than what he's seen on the ground? That makes no sense to me. That would mean that Giovanni Bernard is just as much of a handcuff as Ronald Jones is. I personally think he might be more of a handcuff at this point. Like, Ronald Jones is not a pickup. Now, I know that he still has, I think it's the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Jets or somebody like that. I think it's the Jets in championship week. Let's just say it's the Jets. Like, that's great, right? That's grand. But you would have to have Leonard Fournette get hurt. And then he would have to take on a major role. And then he would end up having to make it to that point. And I just don't see where you would want to roster somebody for 4 weeks in hopes that another player might get hurt and that he might see 49.4% of its production. Sure, Leonard Fournette's been great, but that doesn't turn me on. Half of his production this year does not turn me on. I do not want that anywhere close to my roster. Stop it with the Ronald Jones takes. Please stop it with the Ronald Jones takes. He's not good. He's not going to be good, and the schedule is brutal. Don't do it to yourself. You're not going to make it to the finals in order to play Ronald Jones if you pick him up and try and play him anytime before now and then.
Well, and Arians just hates him.
That too. He'll say it's Keyshawn Vaughn, though, so.
Yeah, rip.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. We got the wide receiver position. Who you got?
So I have Russell Gage, and Russell Gage, the past 2 weeks, he's put up some pretty great points, but I cannot trust anyone on Atlanta's offense. It's so up and down. And Russell Gage is literally the living proof of that. He saw 12 targets and posted a career high stat line, last week in yards and receptions. So do we think he's going to do anything better next week? No. And he has 3 games this season where he's put up a bagel. So he's the prototypical boomer bust candidate. I can't trust him. And against this matchup, it's a divisional matchup against Carolina, who's 9th against the wide receiver. I mean, there's no way he's going to break a lot of people's hearts because they're going to be riding that high from last week and his career high and thinking that he can repeat it. And he's probably going to put up another bagel. So just don't touch him.
Don't touch him. So that's kind of crazy. Both of our receivers that we picked for the guys we don't want anything to do with, they actually both put up their career highs in a lot of different categories. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who put up his career high in targets, receptions, yards, and got his first touchdown, people. So everybody's running out to tell you, go get him. Go get him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's going to be a champion. He saw 12 targets. Go get him. Come on, people. Come on. Get with it. Stop. This guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't hate him by any measure, but when it comes to being an underneath specialist, he is the guy to a T. He's unathletic outside of his burst. He's undersized, and he has a brutal schedule over the next 2 weeks. First, the Lions see Kyle Fuller and the Broncos in Week 14, who have shut out slot receivers like Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. 2 of the past 4 weeks, they've completely obliterated the slot position up against very talented players. Then in Week 15, he sees coverage from one of the best slot corners in the league with Byron Murphy. Murphy's only allowed 24 receptions to the slot position on the entire season. But back to the Broncos, before you guys run out, you pick up, and you play them because maybe you can see some coverage up against linebackers and whatnot. First off, Amon-Ra St. Brown up against man coverage over the past 3 weeks. This is since Reynolds has joined the team. He's seen 2 targets, 1 reception for 9 yards in man coverage. That's nuts. Up against zone coverage, he saw 12 targets for 11 receptions, 20 yards or 70 yards against zone. So when we sit there and we look at the teams that you want to play these guys like Jamison Crowder, right? These players like Cole Beasley, we find teams that like to play a lot of zone coverage because they can find the gaps in the defense, and they're typically the third read where the quarterback can check it down when they're under pressure, and boom, you get 7, 8, 9 yards, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, first off, or I should say, the Denver Broncos don't play a lot of zone coverage. They play zone coverage about 40% of the time compared to man about 60% of the time. So you're not going to see a lot of those opportunities. But on 5-point receptions over the past 4 games that Amon-Ra St. Brown has seen, he hasn't done anything with them. He's had 49.4 receiving yards averaged out throughout those 8 games. Like, he's not giving you anything. And we're talking about a game where he saw 12 targets included in this sample size. Still didn't do much with it until the last play of the game, people. It took it to the last play of the game. We wouldn't be talking about him today if it wasn't for the last play of the game up against a very subpar defense with the Minnesota Vikings. Like, get out of here with that noise. I mean, when we talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown, sure, he has potential to go off in week 16 and 17, but to go out there, roster him, and try and run him out there in your rosters this week, it's not smart. I started him this past week in 3 different leagues because I had to, and it was the Minnesota Vikings, but up against the Denver Broncos, I mean, you might as well just put in, a guy on bye because it's not going to make a difference. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to give you nothing over the next 2 weeks. Don't waste your fab dollars.
Yep. So I pulled up his targets. Obviously, he saw 12 in week 13. He only saw 4 in week 12, 4 in week 11, 6 in 10, 5 in 8, and a whopping 0 in week 7.
I saw that.
I mean, just absolutely crazy. And full disclosure, like I did draft him in Scott Fishbowl, and I've just left him, but that's because Scott Fishbowl is 22 roster spots. You've got plenty of room to hold on to people, but I'm not starting him. I'm just holding on to him for like, maybe he gets to Atlanta. Sure, I'll pop him in there, But yeah, and I love the Sun God just as much as anyone else, but if I ain't got him, I ain't picking him up.
No, it's absolutely it's absurd. It's absurd. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the tight end position. So this is shout out to Colby over there. Wait, was it Colby that asked this question? He's asking if Ricky Seals-Jones is worth the number 3 waiver. So essentially, he's going through, can't find anybody. Is Ricky Seals-Jones worth it at this point?
I really don't think so. And it's another one of those players who I really like as an athlete. I think he's a machine of a man, but in this system and with his injuries, I don't think he's worth a pickup. He looked really great in the first, quarter, third of the season, but then he fell off partially due to injuries, but he hasn't seen more than 4 targets since week 7. John Bates, who's the backup to the backup tight end, has kind of worked his way into the system. He's built a rapport with Heineke, and I don't really expect Ricky Seals-Jones to have the same kind of role he had before his injury. I think that they're going to split up the targets between him and Bates. And in the tight end position, I mean, I would rather pick up like a Conklin, obviously a Hooper who we talked about, but Dallas's defense is coming on. Like they really are. So
I didn't really take it into account, what his outlook could be because of John Bates. And we talked about John Bates a little bit, I believe, last week. If not, that was the Wednesday show. I saw John Bates actually carved out a role for himself, even with Logan Thomas in there to an extent. And I was planning on picking up Ricky Seals-Jones. I have some waiver claims in for him. But honestly, John Bates might actually take a chunk, out of that workload that he's seen. And even if he doesn't, I mean, we're talking about a player coming back from injury at a tight end position. Logan Thomas just came back from an injury at the tight end position, got hurt in the second game back. So Ricky Seals-Jones is somebody for me that I might be a little more cautious at pursuing at an aggressive rate. So Ricky Seals-Jones for me is also somewhat of a fade, but it is, for this, we're talking about players that we don't really want, but as a number 3 waiver wire pickup, like Colby brought up, I don't think this is a bad spot to try and grab him. If he's your third attempt at a pickup, it's not terrible, but I would look at some other tight ends with advantageous matchups who will not share workloads. Guys like Austin Hooper, I mean, that's one of the best names that's ever came out of your mouth on this show in terms of sneaky play. And I love it. It's great. Definitely a sneaky, great play. Let's go ahead on to Giovanni's question with Ayuk or KJ Osborne. It feels like Samuels might be back this week. I don't think Samuels is going to be back. If he is, I don't think they're going to utilize him the full workload. So if this is a starter sit question, I might lean Ayuk, but Ayuk just let me down this past week after this is the first week I said start Ayuk, and then he let me down. Up against the Bengals actually have been very good in their secondary. So I'm probably going to fade Ayuk and play KJ Osborne if Thielen doesn't play.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any way that Thielen plays. They're already talking is it season ending? Blah, 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 blah. So he's definitely going to be out for a few weeks.
Well, he got into full practice today. No, I'm just kidding. He did not get into full practice.
What alternate universe am I living in?
I'm just kidding with
Damn
you.
it, Chase. Yeah. No, I think that Kittle proved last week that, without Debo there, that Kittle is the number 1 alpha. He's the stud. He's the dude. Every other piece is kind of ancillary at this point, and they're run heavy. So, yeah. It sucks because I really want Ayuk to be a thing, but he's just so up and down. Whereas that Osborne's going to have that role and that volume.
I like it. All right, so let's go ahead and finish out with some of our gems. These are the players that nobody else is really talking about. You might find them on a waiver wire here or there, but I mean, honestly, these guys, man, I hate my pick so much. I just looked at my pick. It is so bad.
It's so gross.
It's so gross. Oh, God, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do this section with you. All right, start out with your guy first because your guy's actually okay.
So my pick is Jalen Guyton. He's only registered in 0.2% of ESPN leagues. He's not applicable in Yahoo leagues. Keenan Allen was placed on the COVID list on Monday. Now, Allen is vaccinated, so he has the potential to return for Sunday's matchup. But if he doesn't, Jalen Guyton's going to go off. The Giants are 29th against the pass. I read too fast. The past 4 weeks against the wide receiver position. To be fair, and like a little bit of a caveat, I think it's more of an Austin Eckler game, but I think Guyton should get his before the game gets too out of hand. And I just love the kid. I want to make this happen. I'm sending all my energy into the universe for this kid.
Can I pick Elijah Moore?
I don't think that's a gem.
It kind of is a gem, right?
He's like 70% rostered
in like 16 leagues. Is that
no? I looked him up today. He's steadily gone up because we featured him, like, a few weeks in a row, and every week he got more and more and more. And this week, when I was doing the show sheet, he's up to 70% rostered in ESPN leagues.
Yeah, but what about we don't cover like gems for like 16 leagues?
No, you know what? It's your show. You do you.
Oh man! Oh, this is so sad. All right, I'm going. Oh, this is gross.
Do it.
I'm literally looking for other players, like as I'm talking to an extent, because I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. Let me get his stats real quick because I clicked out of the screen. Laquan Treadwell. Oh god, that's so bad. Laquan Treadwell is somebody who is somewhat trending up for me. He played 93% of the snaps last week. He's seen 4 receptions in each of the past 2 contests. He has 10.2 fantasy points last week. And this offense, like we talked about, is absolutely terrible. It's atrocious. But up against the Rams to put up 10.2 points, and for your 5 targets to see an average target depth of, what is that, about 10.2 yards per target as well? Somewhere around there. It's 10.25, 10.3. It's something as to where like you might be able to have a little bit of faith that Laquan Treadwell could have his, what is this, like 8th year breakout or 6th year? No, I'm just kidding. His I think it's actually a 6th year breakout essentially. At least towards the tail end of the season.
He was a stud in college, and then he suffered, I believe he played at Ole Miss, and then had a super, super bad broken leg. And, sometimes it takes a while for that to heal. And then, you're on practice squads and you're just here. Well, no, I'm not saying that, but you're on a practice squad and then, people cut you and you just move around and you're cut so often that you never really have a good chance to get a feel of the offense that you're on. Sure. And I think that that's his situation. I think that he's a really good athlete. He just suffered a terrible injury and he's got hands. I'm not sure about his speed after the leg injury, but he's definitely getting targets in Jacksonville. So I don't hate this pick, which is really counterintuitive to all the trash that we talked about Jacksonville, but Urban Meyer's utilizing him. And
did you type in gross with 4 exclamation points after my Laquan Treadwell addition to the show sheet? You typed in gross. Nope. Can I undo that? I can't undo it. You typed in gross with 4 exclamation points. Don't even start with me. It's a gross pick.
It's week 14.
Hey, for deeper
rosters. If we can't have fun now, when can we have fun?
You know what I like for this is the best ball leagues allow you to pick up players. You can't find this very often, but occasionally you can find one, and I'm actually going to get off here. I'm going to go put in a waiver claim for Laquan Treadwell, a best ball league where I can pick up and drop players. Weenus!
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Weenus.
Did you lose, Britt?
Yeah, no! Number 1 seed.
You were representing us.
The guy put up a literal season high for the entire league against me.
That's brutal.
Yeah, he scored like 333 points. So
that's a lot of points, even for Weenus.
it was pretty crazy.
Guys, check.
And I had this whole thing planned out. I had this whole I'm good at being bad. It feels good to be bad kind of thing. I had it planned, but it's not going to happen.
All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. We're gonna call this show. Britt, let everyone know where to find you. Why are you qualified to be talking about some fantasy football?
Well, I did make Scott Fishbowl playoffs, which is why I'm wearing the Scott Fishbowl shirt.
Did you?
I
No way!
did.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I
That's sick.
started out the season really bad, and then like I was bottom 3, and then I ended up 4th. I finished 8-5, so that was pretty exciting. But I'm over
That's
at Fighting
sick.
Chance Fantasy. Thank you. I'm super stoked.
I didn't want
I'm
to
over
talk
at
about
Fighting
that.
Chance Fantasy. And I write a weekly value DFS waiver article or DFS article over there. I obviously do this show. Tomorrow, there is a post waiver wire article where if you missed out on your players, then these people who might still be out there. And then I also do a podcast with Kevin Tompkins and Gary Haddow on Sundays called Calm Before the Storm. And I'm finishing out the season doing Lightning Round on Wednesdays with Kevin, Gary, and then Andrew Cooper.
Hell yeah. Go on, girl. Get it. Absolutely love it. Thank you for joining the show and doing the show sheet and all that fun stuff and your waiver wire articles, of course. Oh man, you guys can go find all of my content over there at ff_intervention. Big shout out to Fantasy Football Discussion. Thank you guys for having us. Thank you guys for bringing those questions. You guys can go check out the DOSE score, the dump off containment efficiency score, where you can play pass catch and running backs over there at fantasyintervention.com/DOCE. Y'all can find my articles at playerprofiler.com and trophysmack.com. Don't forget to get a trophy, throw a ring into your cart along with either a belt or a trophy and get that ring $60 value for free. Use promo code CIRCLE at checkout. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.